Hello, my friends. You know, I've been recently watching more and more vlogs as I try to catch up on things that I've been missing for a long time. Uh, some things you just can't explain to people unless you've been through the grinder. Anyhow, the two that struck out the most recent are revolving the RPG Brigade off of YouTube, which seems like a great thing. I've enjoyed so many vlogs and videos that from various people that I can't even begin to announce the names. And I tried. I should have wrote this down yesterday when I saw it because it struck me as something I'd like to try. It's fairly recent, as opposed to the one that was posted 3 months ago, where it says, basically make something, anything. Well, I'm going to get around to something of that effect too. Actually, I got something for that, but I don't think it quite falls in the venue of what the intentions were for the vlog and the project, if you will. Pick five. Pick my five most favorite game systems, and I'm going to follow Samwise Seven's approach to this. I believe that was him, where he says, "I think what they meant was five games I would like to play in." I have GM'd all but one of these, and I've played in all but one of these. And the one I haven't played or ran is because I strangely enough, could never find a group of people who really, really wanted to play it. And of course, we start out with the granddaddy of all these things, the ones that make the main, right? Dungeons and Dragons. We got the 2.0, we got the 3.0, and we got the 3.5. Now, once upon a time, I had the 1.0, and this was when I was very young, and my mother got into a religious kick at the time. Everybody was screaming the devil and D&D, and she'd maybe get rid of them. She had a nice bonfire. And then I was able to start buying the second edition shortly after that. But these are my go-tos. You can't go wrong with these systems, and they're great. I like them. I play them. I run them. Now I'm not going to go off on a tangent. I've already done a thing about 4.0 and 5.0. But I will say, I have played and I have ran a 4.0 campaign. I played in the campaign, and there's some advantages. There's some good stuff there, but for the majority of it, it was lame, and it lacked the soul and the control that these older systems provide. Now maybe they enhanced on it, but I found it suspiciously convenient that 4.0 barely got its teeth ground in, barely got going, barely got a significant number of source books reprinted from the older stuff, when booyah, 5.0 comes flying out of nowhere. And then what's that mean? Run out to the store, buy a whole bunch of other stuff, and this stuff here we're going to chuck to the shelf, we're going to chuck it to the bin. Well, hell, just throw it on the burn pile, right? I'm sorry, isn't that what we're going to, all right, anyway. My next pick, and this is because I'm a die-hard sci-fi fanatic. I grew up with science fiction. I was enamored with Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Star Wars. I like Star Trek. I believe they have room for both, and they have their advantages and disadvantages. I actually have the Star Trek role playing game upstairs in the shelves in my mom's house, and I also have the original West End version of Star Wars. Now, I've played Wizard of the Coast variant, the 2D variant, or the D20 system, which, hey, it's a good system. You can't really go wrong, because all it is a repackaged Dungeons and Dragons. The magic becomes the force, and the sword becomes the blaster. It's not road science, and it is easily, if you can play the one, you can play the other. This one here, a little bit more chunky when it comes to rules, but it's more spiritual to the game, to the old legend canon, I guess. I'm a bit cheesed that Disney has rewritten the damn canon, because I thought, hey, Lucas had it right for 40 years. Why you have to go and redo things? I don't care about the money side of things. I'm sorry, but that's me. But this is a great system, a lot of it, a lot of good books to it. Would have loved to play the game itself as a player. I've GM'd it many times. I think I've only played twice, and once was with the Wizard of the Coast D20 system, which brings me to another role playing master. This is Well, gee, folks, you wouldn't if it wasn't for J.R.R. Tolkien, we wouldn't have most of the genre that we have today. It would not be the same. Now, plenty of people argue that goblins and ghosts and demons and devils and vampires and all that other stuff came long before Tolkien put them together and wrote the books that he did. And I'll grant you that that's true. Mythology is full of that stuff. On the other hand, the man was a genius, a literary genius, and was a master storyteller. And he brought it together in such a way that it made me personally long to be there. And so when the game system came out, come on, everybody knows MERP. Even if you've never played MERP, got MERP. This here, original first edition MERP rules. And then they came out with a second edition rules some years later. And I understand there's a 3.0 version of it floating around. Now, here, this is just me as a GM saying, I don't care for the system. The system itself is playable. It's a bit awkward and chunky once again. It's actually whenever I run the system, it's easier for me to have the players use the try and true D&D rule books. This is stuff we know, they know real well, and I just use those rules because one of the things MERP lacks is a significant magic base. There's a reason why J.R.R. Tolkien wrote it that way. He didn't want it to be, to my best of my knowledge, a story about dominated by wizards flinging lightning bolts and fireballs. You'll note that they don't do that. They just don't do that. And you don't have, what, a handful of wizards? Some wannabes? And, other people, magical, elves and so on and so forth. But it's not the same thing. And they don't do it like D&D did. But the world itself is awesome. All the books, all the source books, even the modules focus on a specific area of the Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien's world, and it gives you plenty of detail and depth. And uniquely enough for them, they come in three different timelines. They give you the current timeline when the Lord of the Ring takes place, what's considered the current timeline. They also picked one in general called in the year Third Age, 1640. This is 1,000 years before the Ring. A lot of the kingdoms are still functionable in one layer or another. A lot more stuff's going on, and it's a more player friendly for PG stuff. And then there's an older version. No, maybe it's 4.0 after the Fourth Age. But anyway, each module has a breakdown of three eras for the particular setting, which is unique to my knowledge. I don't see too many other game systems. Now, I will grant you, my friends, I have not played every game ever made. I don't own a tenth of the games that are made, and good luck. For those of you who have the deep pockets to have a warehouse full of game stuff, God bless you, because you help make it possible for everybody else to own stuff. Because if we weren't shelling out the gobs of money to buy this stuff, nobody would, and it would peter out and die. Matter of fact, I think I mentioned this in a slight conversation with Sam Y7 here just this morning, that I was staring at my shelves, and I one time did a recent inventory of my stuff, and at face value of what's listed on the books, I've got excess of $25,000 worth of material that I've purchased over 4 decades. That does not include the hordes of lead miniatures that I have and a bunch of magazine stuff like the RPGA Network's magazine, the zine, and Dragon and Dungeon, what left of them that survived the storage. That's another story for another day. Anyway, so there's two, although you can make, or three systems. You can make an argument that those systems are, repetitive, same stuff. And so, another huge fan of is MechWarrior, and this is my version of it. I also have BattleTech. I'm a big a wargamer type, tabletop wargaming. Love the stuff. I have a number of different systems from different eras, and this one when it came out was an awesome read. All the source books, great material, lots of color, lots of stuff. The rules we're back to that being kind of chunky because the RPG version was like a second stab at trying to cash in on that part of the game where because people wanted to do it. Well, they also have rules for the tabletop, the BattleTech. Everybody knows aerospace, space combat. They've got arena combat rules, and they even have large scale unit combat rules. I can't remember off the top of my head. I have that box set upstairs someplace. I just can't remember the name of it. I never got a chance to play as a player in this. I've wargamed plenty of times with other people, but that's in a wargaming situation. Nobody's really the judge or the GM or DM or however you want to consider. But I would have loved to play in this, and who knows, maybe someday I'll get an opportunity. You kind of have to be political minded when you play something like this. Reminds me of Twilight 2000 and the old shoe, and I got that upstairs somewhere too. What is it? Diplomacy. Very strange game, that one there. You got to kind of have it up here to play it well. And Twilight 2000, well, that's a runner up, but it's I never got to play in it, but I've played it. I've run it many times, which is a post-apocalyptic scenario, which brings me to the next one, the next major shelf of books that I have upstairs, of course, is Shadowrun. Now, I know they've reintroduced this. This is the original version when it came out. I don't know what version there is now. Like I said, when you start dropping 20, 30 bucks a pop, and you got a family, you got life, you got expenses. When I was a bachelor, I was spending 50, 60 bucks a week every week for a long, long time between my first and second marriage and didn't think nothing of it. And that was in late 80s, early 90s money, so I don't know what translate. I've been looking at stuff at JCD and Hobby, which is I don't know, small retail gaming chain here in town in Des Moines. I don't know if they're bigger than that, but I miss my old game store. At least old Ivor knew his stuff and I could ask him smart questions. These other guys, these younger guys, they just kind of stare at me funny. Like, what's wrong with you, you old relic? You should know all this stuff. But I would dearly love to play in this. This is was it a cyberpunk system? And very well written. The rules are very easy to follow, I think. There are a few stumbling spots, but for the most part, it's just a repackaged versions of the basic mechanics from Dungeons & Dragons. And I hear the story, that's not true. It is true. I'm sorry, but the lion's share of the game systems, I don't care what the genre comes from. They looked at this. They didn't outright plagiarize it, but a lot of their basic material come from Dungeons and Dragons or Rollmaster. Eat it, live with it, debate me. I don't care. Then, of course, like I said, being a science fiction nut, one of my earliest systems, I did have another runner-up we call Gamma World. For some reason, it along with my first edition box, red book, black and blue book for Dungeons and Dragons, I can't find. I don't know if somebody snagged them or if they're still stuck in mom somewhere out here in the property. It in and of itself, this is where I'm sitting at right now. In case you ain't caught on to that, this is my home. It's mobile. It's an RV. I don't live at my mom's. It's just I'm too old to be doing that, and there's personal issues involved. But anyway, I'm out here for the holiday. It is Memorial Day weekend, I believe, and I've been doing a lot of work. We're still digging out the barn, and I'm finding a lot of stuff that was just chewed the hell out of by the mice. And I'm, what do you do, right? It's part of the prices we pay. Anyway, I was able to salvage, of course, this one here, Space Opera. This was the first large game system I purchased other than Dungeons and Dragons, and it caught my eye because it was sitting on a shelf that people weren't buying, and Ivor was discounting it, and I started to play it, and in and of itself, it's an awesome system. I've done a vlog on this. I ought to do a couple more on some of the supplements to go with it. But the truth of the matter is this particular system here is the granddaddy of all science fiction as far as I'm concerned. It was packaged and sold about the same time the first edition Traveler came out. And I like Traveler. I played Traveler. My best friend growing up, he bought Traveler. I bought Space Opera. I bought Star Wars, or I bought Dungeons and Dragons and Gamma World. He bought Boot Hill, and he bought got Champions, which I'm got nothing against Champions, nothing against the superhero genre venue. I've just never caught into it. I just wasn't a superhero kind of guy. But in space opera, this game system here by itself, without any others, you don't need anything else other than this to create yourself a good system. And you can take any science fiction, let's just say just for sake of argument, and I know my blog here is starting to run over 15 minutes, and people tend to ignore those. But take into account that let's just say they never made the Star Wars, they never made a BattleTech, but they made the books, and you were reading the books, and you thought, oh, I'd love to play. I love to play a game in Dune. I'd like to take Dune and turn it into an RPG, an actual large successful one, because somebody did attempt to make Dune into a game. It just didn't do well. The fact is, this set of books right here easily lets you do it. You can take this and you can turn your favorite sci-fi and cyberpunk game system, book and turn it into a playable game system using the basic rules here and the world from the book. Don't we all do that? Isn't that how most of this stuff come out, right? I don't know. Maybe it is. I never got to play it. I ran it. I GM'd numerous times. Like Judges Guild like to call it, I judged and moderated, but I never got to play it as a character. I would like to have played it as a character just by the way they came out with it. They're using their world and their version. What I like about it, now I'll grant you, the politics in it are 35 years out of date now, of course, but the concept was valid. What would happen in 1,000 years if humanity continued on the pace that it was during the Cold War and eventually sprouted into space? And that's basically how this thing played out, right? Awesome system, great system. Of course, now that's more than 5, and I'll grant you that. And of course, I have to bring in the last one. I can't not bring this one in and put a plug at it, even though none of you guys have got this system. You haven't got it because I haven't got it published yet. But it's done. It's made. I'm still working on the finer details. I'm trying to get this, which was the printed copy, because I didn't have the means to store things on a digital format. I had to print them. And now that I have the means to store them, once again, a lot of backstory and politics here. Nobody really gives a what about. But the fact of the matter is, it's taking time. I am translating this. Currently about to hit a page 100 on the core book, and the core book's 320 pages. So with my job and my other responsibilities and looking after my mother, my wife, you just can't spend 10 hours a day like I did making this. I spent many years working on this, and hourly blocks of 6 to 10 hours a day for years. But I had a load of time, and I used it creatively and reason and hopefully profitably. Yes, I'm blatantly plugging it. But as I've said in my blogs, I got a contract here a couple months ago from Golden Games. They're associated with Golden Bell Enterprises and Fuller Bear Press. They saw a Kickstarter I tried to do and it didn't take off, but they liked what they saw, and we signed a contract. The question, of course, is will it ever see print? I don't know. I do know one thing. I'll bloody will get the damn thing out there. With help, with them, without them, I got to do it on my own and give it away for free on the side of the corner somewhere. But Stellar Frontiers, a working title, mind you, Stellar Frontiers. There's 3 books. I got 2 here. The third one's up here in the cabinet. What was this one? Blueprint guide's up there. This is the equipment guide, and this is the core book. The premise of this particular system is that you can play it. You can GM it, you can play it. You don't need a GM in the beginning. You don't really. If you're going to play with other players, then somebody should serve as the moderator. But for the most part, this is an actual solo game system designed from the foundation up to be played by yourself. If you got a lot of time. I'll grant you this is the sort of thing that the longer you play it, the bigger things get. And having a computer keep track of all your accounting is probably a good thing. And basically, the system is set up so you play various degrees of this. At the base degree, it's a space version of SimCities or you know, I don't want to say command and conquer, but there is some elements to that too. You start out with a colony effort. You got some builds, some factories. You got a couple ships, a couple mining ships, a couple scout ships. You're going to build up your small empire into something bigger. And I have event roles. I have ship traffic roles. I have negotiation roles. I have NPC generation charts. I have everything you need here to deal with the mechanics of running a game system without another player. Tell me whether the game system really is designed to do that. And I'm not tooting my horn when I say that, but I spent better part of a decade working on this, my friends. It will eventually see somebody's shelf someday, because this is my legacy. This makes all this, you know, all these piles of other stuff that I've collected and read and reread and studied and played and ran and played pay off. Hey, but you got my 5 picks, maybe a few others. Sorry it ran a little long. Hope you all have a good holiday, and we'll think about you the next time when the next one of these comes out, because I'll be here to try to join in on it and get my 2 cents worth in, whether y'all want to hear it or not, right? Hey, you don't have to tune in. If you do tune in, what does this seem? You know, they say, hey, you know what, click on the thing, subscribe, tell your friends, at least tell your friends that this crazy fat SOB thinks he's a GM, somebody wannabe writer, is making a butt ass out of himself. And enjoy the day. Thank you very much.